What if the fruit bowl sitting on your kitchen counter right now is quietly accelerating memory loss? Not candy, not soda, fruit. The kind your doctor smiles at, the kind your grocery store displays under signs that say fresh, natural, and heart healthy. Some of it genuinely protects your brain, but some of it, especially after 60, is doing something to your blood sugar, your insulin levels, and your neurons that you absolutely need to understand before you take another bite. Today, we are looking at 8 fruits. 4 that are quietly aging your brain faster than most people realize, and 4 that neuroscientists now consider among the most powerful foods on Earth for protecting memory and restoring cognitive function. By the time we reach the last fruit on this list, you will never look at a fruit label the same way again. Before we get into the list, you need to understand one thing, because it makes everything else make sense. Your brain runs on glucose. But the key is not the fuel itself, it is the delivery. When glucose enters your bloodstream slowly, your brain gets a steady, regulated supply of energy. Neurons fire properly, memory consolidates, inflammation stays low. But when glucose floods your bloodstream rapidly, your pancreas releases a surge of insulin to manage it. Over time, those repeated insulin surges cause your brain cells to stop responding to insulin efficiently. Researchers at the National Institutes of Health have described this process as the brain losing its ability to feed itself. The result is neuroinflammation, damage to the blood-brain barrier, and the accelerated buildup of amyloid plaques, the same structures associated with Alzheimer's disease. A 2022 review published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that insulin resistance in the brain is present in over 80% of Alzheimer's patients. So the question with every fruit is not simply, is it natural? The question is, what does it do to your insulin? And after 60, when metabolic sensitivity is already declining, that question matters more than at any other point in your life. Here is the first fruit that works against your brain. Dried fruit, raisins, dried apricots, dried cranberries, dried mango. They are sold as convenient, natural, and full of nutrients. Hiking trail mix, granola, yogurt toppings, oatmeal additions. The marketing positions them as wholesome and energizing. But here is what happens during the drying process. All the water is removed, the fiber structure is partially collapsed, and the natural sugars become extraordinarily concentrated. A single small box of raisins, the kind marketed to children as a healthy snack, contains approximately 25 grams of sugar. That is equivalent to eating 6 fresh grapes, but your body processes the raisin version far faster because the structure that would normally slow absorption is gone. The glycemic index of raisins sits between 64 and 66. That is in the same range as white bread. When you eat a handful of raisins as a snack, you are producing an insulin response nearly identical to eating 2 slices of toast with nothing on them. For the aging brain, this translates directly into glucose variability, those rapid spikes and crashes that stress cerebrovascular tissue and damage the neurons responsible for regulating blood flow. A long-term study from the Australian National University found that higher blood sugar levels, even within ranges considered clinically normal, were associated with measurable shrinkage of the hippocampus over time. The hippocampus is the brain's primary memory center, and dried fruit, eaten casually and regularly, is one of the most consistent drivers of those blood sugar patterns. The second fruit that ages the brain is canned fruit in syrup, peaches, pears, mandarin oranges, fruit cocktail. Canned fruit has been a staple in American households for generations. It is affordable, long-lasting, and often purchased with the genuine intention of eating more fruit. The problem is not the fruit itself. The problem is what surrounds it in that can. Heavy syrup contains between 38 and 46 grams of added sugar per cup. Even light syrup contains 28 to 34 grams. The fruit inside has already been heat processed, which breaks down much of its natural fiber and cellular structure. So, you are consuming fruit that has lost most of its fiber protection, submerged in a liquid that is nutritionally closer to pancake syrup than to anything that grew on a tree. A 2021 study in Nutrients examined the relationship between added sugar consumption and markers of neurological inflammation in adults over 60. Elevated C-reactive protein, one of the primary indicators of brain inflammation, was significantly higher in participants who regularly consumed high-sugar packaged foods, including canned fruit in syrup. The comparison is stark. 1 cup of fresh peach slices contains approximately 13 grams of natural sugar with full fiber intact. 1 cup of canned peaches in heavy syrup delivers more than 3 times that sugar load with a fraction of the protective fiber. The visual difference in a glass would stop most people immediately. The sugar content alone should be enough to move canned fruit in syrup permanently off your shopping list. The third fruit that works against your brain is the large tropical variety eaten in excess, specifically overripe bananas and large portions of watermelon. Both fruits contain genuine nutritional value, potassium, vitamins, hydration. Neither is toxic. But the glycemic load of an overripe banana, particularly the large variety sold in most American supermarkets, is considerably higher than most people realize. As a banana ripens, its resistant starch converts to free sugar. An overripe large banana can contain over 30 grams of sugar, with a glycemic index approaching 60 to 65. Watermelon, despite tasting less intensely sweet, has one of the highest glycemic indices of any common fruit, sitting between 72 and 80. That number puts it above many crackers and breakfast cereals. Watermelon is also mostly water, which means it is digested and absorbed very rapidly, producing a fast blood glucose spike with very little fiber to slow it down. In moderate portions, these fruits are manageable. But for adults over 60 who eat a large banana every morning or a generous bowl of watermelon, believing they are making a smart, sugar-free choice, the cumulative insulin burden adds up faster than they realize. The issue is not one banana. The issue is one banana every day for 10 years, combined with a breakfast cereal, a glass of juice, and a handful of granola. The brain does not respond to single meals. It responds to patterns. The fourth fruit that damages the aging brain is maraschino cherries and other heavily processed fruit products. Maraschino cherries are perhaps the most extreme example of what food processing does to natural fruit. Real cherries are genuinely beneficial for brain health. We will discuss that shortly. But maraschino cherries are bleached with sulfur dioxide to remove their natural color, then soaked in high fructose corn syrup, artificial dye, and preservatives for weeks. A single tablespoon contains 5 grams of added sugar, with 0 remaining antioxidants. The original fruit's neuroprotective compounds have been entirely destroyed by the processing. This category extends to glazed fruits used in baking, fruit-flavored snacks, marketed as made with real fruit, and the fruit layers found at the bottom of flavored yogurt containers. The label says fruit. The biology says sugar delivery system with no redemptive nutritional value for the brain whatsoever. Now here is where the conversation changes completely. Because while those 4 fruits are working against your memory, these next 4 are doing something extraordinary inside your brain, and the research behind them is among the most compelling in all of modern neuroscience. Blueberries are first, and the evidence surrounding them is remarkable. A 2020 study from King's College London followed adults with mild memory complaints over 12 weeks. The group that consumed concentrated wild blueberry daily showed measurable improvements in memory recall and spatial navigation compared to the control group. Brain imaging confirmed increased activity in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. Blueberries contain some of the highest concentrations of anthocyanins found in any food. Anthocyanins are flavonoid compounds that cross the blood-brain barrier, directly reducing neuroinflammation and stimulating the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is essentially the protein your brain uses to build new neural connections. The glycemic index of blueberries sits at approximately 53, and because of their exceptional fiber content and anthocyanin structure, their actual effect on blood glucose is far gentler than that number suggests. Half a cup of blueberries with a small amount of fat, a handful of walnuts, or a tablespoon of almond butter slows glucose absorption further and amplifies the delivery of fat-soluble antioxidants. This is the fruit your brain was designed to run on. Wild strawberries and fresh raspberries come next, and they deserve equal attention. Strawberries contain fisetin, a flavonoid that multiple animal studies have shown clear senescent cells from the brain. Senescent cells, sometimes called zombie cells, are damaged cells that stop functioning but refuse to die, releasing inflammatory compounds that damage surrounding healthy tissue. A 2018 study published in eBiomedicine found that fisetin reduced the presence of these cells in the brains of aged mice and restored memory function significantly. The translation to human research is still developing, but the anti-inflammatory properties of fisetin are well established. Raspberries are exceptional for a different reason. They have one of the highest fiber-to-sugar ratios of any fruit. 1 cup of raspberries contains 8 grams of fiber and only 5 grams of natural sugar. That ratio produces almost no glycemic response, meaning your insulin stays stable, your blood glucose rises gently, and your brain receives fuel without the inflammatory spike. Raspberries are also rich in ellagic acid, a compound that research from the Salk Institute has linked to the protection of hippocampal neurons against oxidative stress. The visual contrast with dried fruit is immediate. 1 cup of raspberries delivers 5 grams of sugar with 8 grams of fiber. 1 small box of raisins delivers 25 grams of sugar with negligible fiber. Same category on a grocery shelf, opposite effects in the brain. The third fruit that protects and restores memory is the tart cherry. The real one, not maraschino. Tart cherries, specifically Montmorency cherries, contain one of the highest known concentrations of anthocyanins alongside melatonin precursors that support sleep architecture. This matters enormously for brain health because sleep is the mechanism through which your brain performs its primary waste clearance process called the glymphatic system. During deep sleep, your brain essentially washes itself, flushing out metabolic waste, including amyloid beta proteins. A 2019 study from the University of Exeter found that adults who consumed tart cherry juice twice daily for 12 weeks showed improvements in memory recall, sleep quality, and mental agility. The anti-inflammatory compounds in tart cherries also directly inhibit 2 key inflammatory enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, the same enzymes targeted by anti-inflammatory medications without the side effects. Frozen tart cherries are available year-round and retain virtually all of their active compounds. A small portion, half a cup, over plain Greek yogurt in the evening is one of the most evidence-supported nutritional choices available for the aging brain. The fourth and final fruit is the avocado. And if you are surprised to see it here, that surprise reflects exactly how much confusion exists in the public conversation about fruit and fat. Avocado is botanically a fruit, And for the aging brain, it is possibly the most valuable one on this list. It contains virtually no fructose. Its glycemic index is essentially zero, and it is one of the richest plant-based sources of oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fat that makes olive oil neuroprotective. Your brain is 60% fat by dry weight. The myelin sheaths that insulate your neurons and allow them to fire rapidly are made primarily of fat. When you deprive an aging brain of dietary fat in favor of low-fat fruit products and sugar-laden cereals, you are removing the raw material the brain uses to maintain its own infrastructure. A 2021 study in Nutrients found that regular avocado consumption was associated with significantly improved cognitive flexibility and working memory in adults over 60, with the researchers attributing the effect to both the oleic acid content and the high levels of lutein, a carotenoid that accumulates in brain tissue and protects against oxidative damage. Half an avocado with a small number of blueberries and a handful of walnuts is not just a meal. It is a complete neuroprotective package: fat, anthocyanins, omega-3s, and fiber, all working together to give your brain exactly what the research says it needs. Your brain built everything you value. Every memory, every relationship, every moment of clarity and joy you have experienced in your life was produced by the organ you are either feeding or starving right now, with the choices you make at every meal. The distance between the fruit that harms and the fruit that heals is not complicated. It is not expensive. It is not a dramatic lifestyle overhaul.
It is understanding what your brain actually needs and choosing accordingly. Start with one change today. Move one fruit off your plate and replace it with one from the other side of this list. That single shift, repeated consistently, is the kind of quiet daily decision that neuroscience says makes the measurable difference between a brain that declines and one that fights to stay strong. Tell us in the comments your age, where you are watching from, and which fruit surprised you most on this list. Share this with someone you love who still keeps dried fruit in their pantry thinking it is a healthy snack. And subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next, because the research we are about to cover changes everything you thought you knew about breakfast and your brain.